I would say this is a movie about Elvis periodically watching the news. That's what it is. Like, oh, I'm messing with the guitar here and turning to my left. Oh, MLK. He always said the right thing.
Welcome to Keep It, Crooked Media's show about pop culture and politics and what happens when they smack into each other at an alarming speed. I'm your host, Ira Madison III. I'm a television writer and Fall Out Boy fan.
I'm Louis Virtel. I'm a TV writer and Jane Fonda historian.
Let's get into it.
Baz Luhrmann's Elvis biopic opened this weekend, beating out Top Gun: Maverick to the top of the box office and earning mostly positive reviews, especially for Austin Butler's performance. It's the latest dizzying, music-filled film from Luhrmann, and we have thoughts. I first want to say, film is back.
Go on IndieWire.com. What do you mean?
I will say, though, that apparently this weekend was like one of the first weekends where the 4 top films made over $20 million at the box office.
Oh, that's bizarre.
Like, it's the last time it happened since 2018.
Okay,
so,
I am encouraged
cinema
by
is
that.
back.
And also, by the way, I want to say that I'm very surprised that Top Gun lost out to Elvis, because I was just thinking the cultural memory of Elvis, I feel, has taken a major hit in the past 15 years. For instance, when I was in high school or younger, you would grow up and see, you know, maybe a family member even would have collectible Elvis memorabilia, or, you know, there'd be commercials for Elvis compilations. When we were in high school, there was the Elvis number ones collection with the Junkie XL remix of A Little Less Conversation that we still love, right? What a great remix. But I just don't feel like there are many inroads to knowing who Elvis even was anymore. Like, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody under the age of 25 who knows about, they had to film him from the waist up on Ed Sullivan, or, you know, even where the phrase Elvis has left the building has come from. So the fact that we're getting this movie now at a time where I feel like the entire memory of the 1950s has to do with either a kind of Pleasantville vision of suburbia or Mad Men.
Or water hoses.
Yes. So I'm pleased we get an Elvis movie. I guess we did have Being the Ricardos recently too. But for instance, Marilyn Monroe, that's an image people still remember, and Elvis, I feel like, has just withered a bit. But
we need Kim K to start walking around wearing Elvis's suits.
I mean, don't give her ideas. I mean, sounds like she'll just do it.
I will say, actually, speaking of one of the most iconic moments of someone like doing an Elvis sort of like thing with one of his suits was, I feel like people watching this film are maybe even too young to remember the time when Britney did her first Vegas show and she was wearing the Elvis all-white suit.
Oh, right. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, and that would have been a reference to him back when we were still constantly making references to him, and it excited me, like, looking up Elvis stuff after this. Like, I always love doing that after a biopic, mostly because you get to remember that pop culture is always referencing itself. Like, you may think that, like, we talk about it now in a way that, like, people didn't discuss it before, but they did. And you think of, like, Colonel Parker, and we'll get into Tom Hanks's portrayal of this man, which is unhinged.
Do you know what it was giving to me?
To put it lightly.
We already brought up Goosebumps this episode. I'll bring up another 90s favorite of this podcast. He was giving Dr. Vink from Are You Afraid of the Dark, who
With
just shows up. Yeah. Showing up with an amulet and tempting you with something strange. Like, I didn't realize Colonel Tom Parker was so, like, Maria Uspenskaya-esque, you know, like a strange gypsy woman here to ensnare Elvis.
But I was looking up, like, references to Colonel Parker, right? And apparently there's even like an old Flintstones episode where you remember the Flintstones episode where Fred records an album.
No,
and, like, a single. He records a single, and then, like, he becomes like a pop star briefly, and, like, there's, like, a Colonel Parker-esque character who becomes his manager. So, like, even in, like, 1961, like, people knew who Elvis's manager was and were making fun of him in, like, an animated cartoon for kids.
Yeah, right. That seems very Animaniacs of the Flintstones. I'm surprised they had the gall and the nerve.
I feel like every old Flintstones episode is actually a pop culture reference to something that was going on at the time.
Well, of course, the entire show is.
Yeah.
Jackie Gleason was considering suing because it's just a ripoff of the Honeymooners. In every way, it's just the Honeymooners.
But first, let's talk about Austin Butler, who I thought was fucking amazing. And I would say there's not enough of him in the movie.
Yes, to me, this movie has the problem that, and I'm sorry to do this, I just brought up Madonna, that Evita has, where it feels like it's all music video and fast segues, and you never feel like you're just in a scene with the person the movie is supposed to be about. Like, you never feel like you're getting to the heart of Elvis, you're just watching a montage of Elvis.
I would almost relate it to Luhrmann's Great Gatsby, where you have this narrator talking about, Leo's character, which makes sense because that's how the book is actually written. But Tom Hanks is narrating this entire fucking movie, and you're getting all this backstory about him. And I'm like, can I just watch a movie about Elvis?
There are some who'd make me out to be the villain of this here story.
Yeah, because you also don't get really a fully dimensional take on Colonel Tom Parker either. You just understand that he's a scheming, manipulative, so-called snowman who ensnares Elvis. That's it. You don't get to and at the end he's sick. There's nothing more interesting there. There's, the dynamic doesn't really deepen between that character and Elvis either. But to me, this movie...
Also, the snowman, as he's referred to, every time they say snow job in the movie, I kept thinking of Stepmom.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
Austin Butler. Yes, he's good. There's something about the way Austin Butler looks where he does resemble Elvis in certain ways. And I think in particular, they really nail it during the Elvis comeback years. So late 60s, I think in particular he does. But there's something about the way he looks where it's on and also extremely off, to compare it to another Tom Hanks movie, The Polar Express. There's something lifelike and Elvis-like about him. And then also, he's like a totally different person. He looks like, now we call this Adore Delano, but who used to be Danny Noriega on American Idol. That's who he kept looking like to me.
Yeah, I thought the performance was good, and I just do wish that we had more scenes with Austin Butler, because I feel like there's moments where he's really tapped into the role. Like, I think he's so really into Elvis, and it makes sense because the entire press tour was giving you Gaga on A Star Is Born,
right?
And Gaga on House of Gucci. Which is actually hilarious because the end of the movie, I did not realize that Elvis was once being considered to be the Chris Christopherson role in A Star Is Born.
And death took that opportunity away from him, but what really should have taken it away from him is that it's the world's longest fucking movie. And it is also terrible, and I blame Barbara.
Can you imagine if he had been in that?
I mean, he would have been a better actor than Chris Christopherson, as my dad will tell you. That's my dad's one pop culture sticking point, is that Chris Christopherson was such a bad actor, and we put him in tons of movies at the time.
But yeah, the movie truly just sort of ignores the character that you came to see. I think it feels very Baz Luhrmann in that he has ADD and has to focus on everything else that's happening and all the music and all the spectacle and some interesting way to get into the story, but Tom Hanks in this fat suit as Colonel Parker was the most absurd thing I have seen on screen in quite some time. It is simultaneously worse and somehow more mesmerizing than Jared Leto at House of Gucci.
Stop, you're going to make me cry. Nobody has ever said that to me. Nobody.
Yes. Well, I will say it's it's not as extreme as Jared Leto in House of Gucci, but it is jarring. So
where does the accent come from?
No, you're telling me that's how Colonel Tom Parker talks?
It is not. It is not. I've watched video clips. That is not how Colonel Tom Parker talks.
It makes no sense. And also just a weird role for Tom Hanks to take ultimately. I don't feel like it taps into the best of his abilities. You know, I think of great Tom Hanks roles and I think of Empathy or I guess just that's what he brings. And in this role, I needed like a slightly more menacing quality, I think. I think I needed to be a little bit more afraid of Tom Parker in this movie.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it's a bit like Road to Perdition, where he's playing against type, where he
Yeah.
played like a mobster in that film, but it's so out of left field, and it feels like it's like nothing really commits in it, because we also don't know anything about this man. I had to like Google after to find out like how he was born in the Netherlands and illegally immigrated to the U.S., but like never fully got his citizenship here, but renounced his Netherlands citizenship. So he sort of was like a man with no country.
I think also this movie just needed to have a little bit more to say about Elvis. I'm glad that we went through all the eras, because obviously we got musical performances and just all these songs that are really great. Obviously, Elvis's music is great. But I feel like the best version of this movie would have just focused on the comeback era, because then when you get, first of all, the Best Elvis special, where he's on that square stage in the round and people are, you know, cheering for him as he brings back all these old hits and he's not a has-been anymore. You also get the crux of his relationship with Colonel Tom Parker, who's, you know, trying to force him into making a Christmas special, into performing these very safe songs. And Elvis is turning all these famous other hits on their head and creating a whole new generation of fans for himself. I think maybe if we had just focused on that, we would have gotten a more complete story, because otherwise, what does this movie have to say about Elvis? It's saying he got popular. And by the way, it has nothing to say about how fast he got popular, other than he did know B.B. King and he did know Rosetta Tharpe. So there was some relationship with black artists that's important to him.
Let's get into that.
Yeah.
This movie, it
was midnight in Paris, the way he was mingling with these people.
Yeah. Which is actually not true with how he actually related to B.B. King. You know, like they would have met a couple times. I read up about it, but they weren't hanging out at the local blues store doing, you know, like bebopping with each other. And I do want to say that an Elvis film should explore, obviously, what we now know about Elvis, with that he took, you know, like music and recordings like that black people had done, you know, and like was able to be successful and popular because he was white. I think that the film touches on that, and I think obviously, you know, like Elvis was supremely talented as well, but it doesn't really touch on that and like what it means in terms of just like the music industry. And it instead becomes this weird film where he's this like white kid who like stumbles into like a Baptist church, you know, and then like is like taken over by the music. It was sort of like the opening of Eyes of Tammy Faye. I'm tired of seeing this scene in films where like the young kid wanders into church and then all of a sudden is taken over by the Holy Spirit. And then it felt absurd where there are turning points in Elvis's life that are just like black things happening in the world are sort of like the impetus for him growing, particularly when he is sobbing to Martin Luther King being shot. And it is sort of like helping propel him into who he wants to be artistically. And then when RFK is shot, and it propels him again, even though RFK was actually shot during rehearsals. And so that actually did shake him a bit. But there just seem to be so many moments, you know, where like it feels like MLK and like the civil rights movement and all this turmoil is, you know, like weighing on Elvis's soul and making him become the musician he's supposed to be.
Well, also, I would say this is a movie about Elvis periodically watching the news. That's what it is. You know, like, oh, I'm messing with the guitar here and turning to my left. Oh, MLK. He always said the right thing. Like, what? That's what you have to say about MLK? By the way, I don't know if he was talking to anybody in particular during that scene. I mean, it was hilarious, right?
And then the moment when Colonel Parker feels like one of those Republicans on Twitter who always likes to use one of the random older quotes of MLK that sort of aligns with what they have to say. When he leaves the room, he's like, MLK said, rock and roll was evil.
Right. People say lots of stuff. You can use whatever they say to justify wherever you're coming from.
I'm sure I said Fifi Dobson was evil at some point in 2002.
When she was a threat to take over, I remember. It was Pink versus Fifi Dobson, and, the world went one way. Let's just talk about the music for a second, though. Do you have a favorite Elvis song they featured? At the end, they played In the Ghetto, which I think is one of Elvis's crowning achievements, and I'm glad that we got basically an entirely full performance of Suspicious Minds. I
love Suspicious Minds.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Suspicious Minds is just one of my favorite fucking songs, and I think it's beautiful. I am actually shocked that we did not hear much of Blue Suede Shoes.
Also, Blue Suede Shoes, the rare case of Elvis lifting from a white artist, because that was a Carl Perkins song originally.
But I don't know. I mean, there's some others. I mean, I'm glad we didn't hear All Shook Up.
You're glad we didn't hear it.
I'm glad we didn't hear it because I think, I'm still haunted by that stage production.
Oh, of course. Is that also the one that maybe Celine Dion covered once upon a time?
No, she did You Shook Me All Night Long.
Not even close to true. I just associate her with wearing an Elvis suit at some point. Anyway.
She wore an Elvis suit while doing You Shook Me All Night Long.
Okay, well then that's her fault. Dramaturgically, she messed up. As a historian, I'm disoriented now. Also, do you know what I kind of wish they had gotten into more? And I just want to say it's an extremely long movie, so there had to have been time somehow. But Elvis's movie career, like after he comes back from Germany, after he comes back from being drafted, I needed to see Anne Margaret in this film a little bit. I needed to see, do you know who Carolyn Jones is? She played Morticia Addams in the original Addams Family. And she did a movie with him called King Creole, which I think is probably the best Elvis performance and maybe movie. But I would have loved to see her haunted ass face in this movie. She's also an Oscar nominee, nominated for The Bachelor Party, one of the first Patty Chayefsky written films. But I mean, honestly, if this movie were truncated, I think I would maybe even consider giving it a thumbs up. But it's
very long.
Yeah, it's kitchen sinky. Yeah. And Wikipedia-y. Yeah.
It's very long and yet also doesn't include enough. I need the Priscilla film. How do you leave out the fact that Priscilla was having an affair with Elvis's karate instructor? How do you leave that out? And then he thought about hiring a hitman to kill the instructor. And that's why he knows karate as he was doing, in the special, and then later does it when someone runs up on stage after him. And also, I need the Priscilla film just to take place after Elvis's death for when she was on Dallas for 5 years.
That should just be a movie. Priscilla Presley on Dallas for 5 years. Let's just get into that miniseries. And also, again, there really should be in the maybe post-credit sequence in this movie, they should go through explaining how it is Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter, is such a good actress, because it simply doesn't make sense compared to what Elvis would bring on the silver screen, generally speaking.
One of the shocks, by the way, was seeing Dacre Montgomery from Stranger Things, who is so hot, playing Steve Binder, who was, Elvis's collaborator on the 68 special, but he also directed Diana Ross Live in Central Park.
Oh, wait, is that the one where it's raining on her?
Yes.
Oh, one of the unbelievable, heroic performances of our time. You got to YouTube that if you're unfamiliar.
I love when they used to play that in gay bars all the time. But you know what? We've lost our history.
We need to support specifically these gay bars, and I'm thinking of one in Palm Springs. I'm pretty sure I brought it up recently. That just quads that just plays VHS tapes or converted VHS tapes to CDs of old television specials. I'm talking about grainy Liza with the Z bars. That's what I want.
He also directed the Star Wars holiday special.
Legendaric. A word I rarely say.
Where's Steve Binders? biopic.
So in short, the movie does have some good things going on, but it also has 7,000 other things going on. And one of them really isn't a meaty role for Austin.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I thought he ate, but I would have liked him to have a full meal. You know?
Yes. It was just a peanut butter and banana sandwich. You know, that's not going to fill you up.
It was past apps, okay? Like Baz Luhrmann was handing out canapes. And there was a whole fucking like turkey in the back, okay? There was mac and cheese, there were other side dishes, but Baz Luhrmann is never interested in that.
No. In fact, I can just fully say I just don't like his filmography. I brought up before how his greatest accomplishment is Elizabeth Debicki's performance in The Great Gatsby, but something about Moulin Rouge, even like Strictly Ballroom, after 20 minutes, how do you not get it already? He delivers on a vibe and delivers on a kind of frenetic, thrillingly random thing, and then he keeps doing that. Like, you can't keep being random. You have to like settle in something. You have to, I don't know, endear us a little bit as opposed to just, you know, throttle us with spectacle, which is his only mode of artistry.
I feel like maybe he should do like short films or something, if only because even when he was doing television, the pilot for The Get Down, which, you know, I loved parts of The Get Down, but like even that is like sort of all over the place, you know? And it's just, I have just come to the conclusion that like I don't think he's a great director. I think he does. Yeah, he does vibe. The music montages and elements are always fucking fantastic. But when he has to deliver drama, anything with like a dramatic weight or purpose, when there's no music playing, it's useless.
I also think our country is still in debt from what The Get Down cost. So I blame him for our current economic struggles. Gas prices are up because of Baz Luhrmann securing the rights to whatever funk classic he had at the beginning of The Get Down.
Favorite moments did include Elvis sitting on the Hollywood sign to clear his mind.
That was so out of like an Apple commercial starring Elvis. Also, by the way, I just want to be clear, Elvis takes a meeting at the Hollywood sign where he talks about it's when the comeback special is about to happen, and he's sitting there remarking on, when I first came to Hollywood, I used to sit up here and think of being James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, a name that comes up a couple of times in this movie. And then he asks whoever these people are to comment that his career is in the toilet, and then he says, I knew I liked you, and then they become collaborators.
Also, Elvis wants to fuck his mother in this film.
Yes, they have a very close relationship.
Their faces are always rubbing against one another in scenes, and I was like, what is going on here?
Yeah. Also, his childhood was just exactly Nightmare Alley, right? Up and down. It's a misty carnival with, you know, freaks in the background and a little bit of debauchery. It's like when Nightmare Alley came out, Baz had to be like, "Damn it, bitch, that was my thing."
All right, I'm still giving it a thumbs up. I love that we've just shifted into At the Movies now.
I'm totally down for it. Please,
can we backdoor keep it into an At the Movies reboot?
I think that's easy. I mean, who's doing that right now? Come on, I pick us.
But no thumbs up from you. Do you give it one of those old middle thumbs?
Oh my God.
Sideways thumb?
There's a Sesame Street episode, if I'm not mistaken, with Siskel and Ebert, where Ebert tries flying the half thumb or a thumb's halfway up. And it doesn't go over well with Gene, as you can imagine. Do I give it a halfway up? I would say thumbs down just because, I don't know, nothing was lasting about it ultimately. Like everything Baz Luhrmann does, it's just a glittery cookie you throw down the hatch.
I think it's something to experience. I don't know if it's an amazing film. It's not. But I would suggest that anyone see this in theaters. It feels like cinema to me, even though it is a mess. Okay,
so you're all over the place as usual, but going with thumbs up ultimately. You love mess, quote.
I do.
The Saint
I do.
Maria Kondo.